Hey, I'm Samantha Salmon, certified integrative nutrition coach and brain health licensed trainer and national board certified health and wellness coach. And I'm here today to talk about exercise. And also, I want to dispel some myths that is running around the interwebs. Misinformation is really, I feel like it's at an all-time high right now. And it's just crazy. But I want to focus in first on what's effective and go into some of the things that I'm hearing that is really dangerous that I'm seeing on the interwebs. I wrote a long, not too long, you could manage to read through it, blog post on the benefits of 20-minute workouts, right? And my specialty is metabolic health. I have learned a lot on my vegan journey, my raw vegan journey, high raw vegan journey, also getting into mental health and the bodybuilding fitness space. I've learned a lot. All of these groups have a lot to teach us about metabolic functionality and how to keep your body in a healthy state even when you're short on time. And this is where I landed. So for those of you who you understand that exercise is needed, right? Mostly for your mental health. At least that has been my experience, that nutrition can keep me in a healthy weight range and have healthy functioning of my body. But the exercise helps to keep my mental health really well. Sometimes life gets in the way. Sometimes it's the environment. The environment is not really set up for too much activity. When I'm in Europe, that's not an issue. I'm walking all the time. When I have a gym membership, I'm able to do a lot of fitness. But without a gym membership, with lots of rainy days in New York, I have clients that are dealing with snow and ice, the same in Chicago. And then in Florida, you have dogs off of leashes, people not being able to control their dogs, people spraying chemicals all over the place. You have the swampiness of it, or the humidity. I don't know what it is, but since I've been living here, it's gotten increasingly worse, the amount of gnats that just gather and hover in these clusters. They're getting in your eyes, your ears, your nose, your hair. It's just, you don't even want to be outside. And I heard from a neighbor that it was even worse at one point with what they call love bugs, where they're two bugs, they attach themselves to each other. And there's a ton of them. And I had an experience like that a few years ago in Lake Nona, where when I came out the gym, they were all over the place. And I had never experienced anything like that. I was just like, I was screaming in the parking lot and nobody came to my aid. It seems nobody cared because I guess they're used to this thing. But I wasn't. They were all over on the door and everything. And from my neighbor, what I hear is that was really just, it was way more out of control before. And they would cause stains to the glass and everything because they would just be all over. But you can see like environments like this aren't really conducive to outside working out. And for people who can't afford a gym membership, or that's not accessible, you're just not in the space, the weather's not conducive, all this stuff, it can be a little difficult. So this is where at-home workouts really shine. And if you are tight on time because you have long commutes, long hours at the job, and these things too, for the people that I work with, they tend to have high levels of stress anyway. And exercise is, if done too much, right? If you can do too much exercise that's too strenuous, that works against you because it is exacerbating a stress response, right? So you want to do what they call it, the Goldilocks. You want to find your Goldilocks sweet spot of exercise. Not too little, right? You need just enough for it to be effective for whatever goal you're looking for, but not too much to really stress you out. And I found that the 20-minute like hybrid style workout of doing strength training at your max weight capacity that you can do with a mix of cardio is very beneficial, right? So you get your blood pumping, and which is great for the brain, right? We want blood flow to the brain. You also get the contraction of the muscle, which is then releasing these compounds like myokines, one of which is BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is basically like fertilizer for the brain. You want more of this, right? This helps with cognitive function. And these myokines, they make you feel good, right? That's where the exercise come into place for clarity of thought, for optimal mental health and well-being, right? But on top of that, because you're doing the strength training, you are burning fat after you're working out. So whereas like cardio, if you do like the runners, for example, that do long distance running, so they're doing high intensity, they're doing a long time span, this type of thing can really stress out the body and stress out the nervous system for a lot of people, and they can find themselves gaining weight. I know for me, that was my experience when I got into running. I was gaining weight running and then having issues with my knees and stuff like that, but I still continue to run. But when I got into strength training, I was doing way less strenuous workouts and burning fat. And I've been able to maintain it even if life is not perfect, right? Because there's all these things that can affect fat loss, fat gain, and all of this kind of stuff, like our sleep, our stress level, all of this. But when you are strategic about how you're working out, right, with the length and the quality, so quantity and quality, frequency, which we talked about on the channel before. I had a guest on, and I'll make sure I put a link on there, but we talked about there are these recommendations that come out from the government for the masses, for everybody. But we really need to look at having a bio-individual approach, not just for nutrition, but also our exercise, because too much exercise, and what is too much exercise for someone who's super stressed out, right? We won't know until we see what that person's life is like and what type of workout would be more conducive to calming the nervous system down, getting all those brain health benefits, the metabolic benefits, without putting cortisol into high production. Cortisol is a steroid. It can influence more insulin production, which then causes excess fat, which is highly inflammatory to the body, to grow and stay on. Now, so I wrote a whole long blog post about that you can actually check and read and dive into and figure out a plan that works best for you. I know I found one that I love. It's short on time and it focuses on muscle building, which is great for my brain, great for my body. It keeps my body tight without doing too much, where I can balance all the things in my life and without adding stress to my body, to my joints, or to my schedule or my nervous system. But I also want, because I was looking at some of the things that are being said online around fat burning, right? And there's some myths out there that need to be addressed. So when we're talking about burning fat for metabolic health, yes, this is true. We do want to make sure that we're not holding on to excess fat, because as I said earlier, excess fat is inflammatory to the body. And when you have inflammation in the body, there's going to be inflammation in the brain. If you want to learn more about that, I do trainings in my brain health coaching program where we talk about stuff like this. We talk about how inflammation impacts the brain, different brain health issues, and what we can do naturally just with diet and lifestyle to improve our brain function. Now, when talking about insulin as a driver of fat, yes, if you have high insulin, this is going to be a driver of excess fat. Now, where I see folks getting confused, even people calling themselves a doctor, right? And these are typically chiropractic doctors that seem to be in love with the ketogenic diet. And I don't really get why. I think what's happened with the whole ketogenic movement is one person picked up a short-term study and they're just running around with this information, and it's doing so much harm to the community. So let's talk about insulin. If you're on a ketogenic diet in the short term, my understanding of a ketogenic diet is you are eliminating processed foods, right? And also with that, you're eliminating a lot of fruit, right? You're not consuming fruit most likely. And yes, these fruits have sugars. So they're not putting any requests on the body for sugar, insulin to be released. Yet the fat stores are growing, right? So in terms of insulin needs, the insulin needs are not there because there's no sugar. Insulin is not a bad thing. Insulin too high is a bad thing. Just like when we talk about the stress response on the body, cortisol is released by the adrenals. Cortisol is not a bad hormone. We don't have bad hormones. We have useful hormones for when they're necessary for normal bodily functions. The brain runs on sugar, okay? Sugar's not bad. Now, refined, highly processed sugar is bad, but sugar wrapped in fiber and phytonutrients, which is beneficial for the cells of our body, for our gut microbiome, to be cancer fighting, blood pressure regulating, all of these things. These are helpful things. And yes, sugar is packed in there because it gives the brain energy. Sugar is the primary and preferred fuel source of the brain, okay? The problem that comes into play is people when they go on a ketogenic diet, they don't have the demands for insulin. And so they think, oh, this is a good thing. But the problem is it's not sustainable. And if you continue to eat a high fat diet and very little nutrients, you end up nutrient deficient. You end up with issues like high blood pressure, because in that meat is a lot of salt, it's a lot of sodium. You end up with nutrient deficiencies and depletion because the animal products don't have the enzymes and micronutrients found in fruits, okay? And you end up being dependent on a lot of these nutraceuticals, supplements, and things like this that these chiropractic doctors are selling, which is why there's this conversation now. Are these people spreading misinformation, which is just spreading inaccurate information from their own ignorance, or are they spreading disinformation, which means they know the truth, but they're purposely deceiving the public in order to sell products? I don't know, right? I don't know these people's intention, but what I do know is that for folks on keto, the moment they try to course correct, right, they might have a few blueberries or something like that because they heard it's good for the brain, which it is. And all of a sudden now sugar is in the body, insulin is released, but because the fat stores are so high, the insulin is not able to get into the muscle and liver cells like it's supposed to. Now the sugar is staying in the bloodstream. This is a continued thing of this. Let's say someone on keto says, you know what, I want to do blueberries in oatmeal now every day because I found out that blueberries are really great for the brain and I just happen to like it in oatmeal, or, something like this, right? Now you're putting more demands, right? These are healthy foods, more demands for sugar on the body, high fat stores. Now the insulin is going to do its job. Insulin's job is to basically take that sugar from the bloodstream and get it into the muscle cells, right? But it can't get in there because there's so much fat. The fat is basically clogging up, right, the cells. And so the sugar then stays in the bloodstream, and that accumulation, now you have high blood sugar. This is why it is not a sustainable plan, right? You get short-term benefits, but it's not sustainable for long-term health. We don't have what they call in the research field longitudinal studies that show the efficacy of a keto diet, right? So this thing, we need to really understand that. Now, I heard this crazy guy on the internet that apparently who has gained a lot of influence saying that fat calories don't influence insulin. And I just explained how they absolutely do. Okay. The whole calorie in, calorie out thing, that energy, what they call it, the energy theory or whatever, this does matter. I know from my personal experience being a vegan, I went vegan and gained 20 pounds at the beginning. And that's because I was eating a lot of calorie dense foods. Yes, I was eating a lot of things that the field would consider healthy, yet I was gaining weight. But there were a lot of things that I wasn't eating. I wasn't eating any leafy green vegetables, which are nutrient dense and low, very low in calories, to the point where you have organizations like Weight Watchers, or now they call themselves WW or W, whatever they're calling themselves now. And even the bodybuilding community, like, they don't even count these types of things. Cruciferous vegetables, spinach, kale, these leafy greens and things. You don't, because there's like nothing. It's like single digits or even low double digit calories, where it's none of it, it's gonna matter. It's gonna provide the bulk, which in the research field, nutrition research, they call it volumetrics. It provides the bulk to signal fullness in the body. That's why it's a natural GLP-1. It's basically your natural GLP-1 before pharmaceutical industries could make money like they are right now with this thing. And just so you know, if you have any friends or family members that are taking GLP-1s, the science is showing that it's causing retinopathy. So do you want to risk blindness taking this needle, this injection every single day for the rest of your life, on top of a whole bunch of other side effects, when you can just eat lots of leafy green vegetables, which improve metabolic function? They improve the health of your mitochondria and your cellular health. They improve your vision, which 50% of the vision is in the brain. So you're talking about brain health right there. And the essential nutrients we need as we age, especially women, when we talk about brain health, hormone health, bone health, muscle health, right? All of that is predicated upon having nutrients, micronutrients for the cells. That's why we eat. We don't eat to have a good time just because it feels good. Actually, the body is supposed to eat for nutrients to feed the cells so they can do what it needs to do to keep us alive and working properly. This body is a vessel for us to maneuver this earth, right? And so the food serves as a fuel source for the cells to keep the body well so this vehicle can run properly. Okay? Just like we don't give our car the gas it wants because it tastes better. If it could talk back, it probably would say, you know what, I don't like the taste of this one, but I like the taste of... No, but listen, even if the car liked the taste of water better, it's not going to run, right? It just doesn't work that way. The body works in a very specific way, and some of these people spreading misinformation, they seem to avoid talking about the actual scientific evidence behind some of the things that they're saying. They also talk about how you want to get into ketosis, right, to burn fat. And you can get into ketosis via fasting. And some of them, they even talk about intermittent fasting. You all who've been following me for a long time, I talk about intermittent fasting too, because we clearly have a pattern in this country, in America, of overeating. And intermittent fasting tends to just regulate and normalize things to avoid that. So I agree, intermittent fasting is beneficial, and you can get into ketosis through intermittent fasting. You don't have to starve your body of nutrients, of polyphenols and other helpful micronutrients and helpful enzymes that are needed for every metabolic function of the body in order to reach ketosis. And I think they agree, right? That's the whole point of why even some of these people spreading the misinformation are pushing this whole keto diet, the main version of keto, because there's a healthier version of keto. There are people who thrive better on more fat. Then there are people like myself who do better on lower fat, right? Again, nutrition we need to come at this from a bio-individual approach, because not the same nutritional guidelines are going to work for everybody. But what we do know is that keto long-term is dangerous for absolutely everyone, right? If you plan to live 80, 90, 100 years, but if your goal is just to get to 50, then it might not be a big deal. I've had some clients who were basically in that age range when things started to show up and become a problem from the keto diet. Sometimes it could take time. It really depends on how long you could sustain not having any type of healthy sugar, right? Healthy sugar. So no fruits or vegetables with sugar that would actually demand an insulin response from the body without having issues of hypertension, having issues of a cardiovascular disease, or any kind of metabolic dysfunction, right? So, which is, in this environment, especially post-pandemic, is quite difficult to do. So I think that we're in agreement, those keto folks and myself, on the overeating. It doesn't matter the diet that you're on. Most of us are very sedentary. If you're taking in more energy than you're expending, then yes, you're gonna most likely feel an effect. Now, there's some people who will say, no, on a fruitarian diet, you can have all these calories and not gain weight. I've heard women who have had a different response to that, and other people, mostly men or women who are really great metabolizers, who don't seem to have that. Again, this seems to be very bio-individual, but I do agree the quality, obviously, at the end of the day, quality is always going to matter. Right? Quality of the food is always going to matter. That's the priority, right? But overeating, not only do you run the risk of gaining and keeping on excess fat, but also the digestive issues that could come from that. Now, like I said, in order to release the fat and keep it off, you don't have to work out too hard. And I think we have an agreement on that about walking. It's so funny because with the keto people and myself, we agree on a lot of things when it comes to burning fat and metabolic health, with the exception of the food source. And I think the main reason why keto folks are having these short-term benefits is primarily because they're cutting out processed foods. And even if you're eating plant-based, you need to be cutting out the processed foods too, because the processed foods accelerate the weight gain and they disrupt mental health functioning. The issue that I'm seeing is that for folks with depression, avoiding these substances is very difficult, and intermittent fasting is very difficult, even though we see that intermittent fasting is helpful for depression, right? But it's, if you're already in there, how do you get folks to make these healthier choices? Their brain is just not in that state of being ready for action. So I think I pretty much addressed some of the main issues of misinformation that's floating around out there. And they even, in the keto space, they even admit that if you have a little bit of carbs, and this thing with carbs, let's explain this too, because I think folks are confused, and we really need to stop using the word carbs, because I just think like we're in a space of so much confusion around nutrition that we just need to stop using the word carbs. All plant foods, all fiber-rich foods, which if you want a healthy brain, you need to have a healthy cardiovascular system, right? For blood flow to the brain, right? That's how the brain gets nutrients, okay? Number one. Number two, you also need a healthy gut microbiome. How do you have a healthy gut? You got to feed the gut bugs. What do the gut bugs like to eat? Fiber. And from the fiber, when they digest the fiber, they create now short chain fatty acids like butyrate, right? They have all these beneficial things that they do for the body, but the most important thing is keeping the integrity of the intestinal lining so we can actually absorb the nutrients from the foods that we're eating. What good is it to have a healthy diet, to invest in organic, right? To invest in nutrients, even if you're taking supplementation, when you can't absorb the nutrients because your gut is compromised? And in order to have a healthy gut, the science says you need about 30 different plant foods a week. This is what carbs are. All plant foods are carbs, right? Fiber, carbs, okay? So we need to move away from that. When people are concerned about gaining this weight and they use the term carbs, really what they should be talking about is processed foods, donuts, cookies, and things like that. Yes, those are carbs, but they're processed foods. It's not because they're carbs. It's because they're processed foods. They're ultra processed foods with all these chemicals and toxins and sugar, which is highly inflammatory to the body, disruptive to your gut microbiome. There's a lot of salt in these foods. Even if you don't taste it, the salt helps to augment the flavor. And the level of salt in these processed foods actually eats away at the lining of your gut. You will have mental health dysfunction eating processed foods, but not eating carbs that are fiber rich, that are nutrient rich. So we need to really move away from using the term carbs because it only makes things more confusing for everybody, I feel like. Anyway, I would love to hear your thoughts on this video. I would love to hear your thoughts on the crazy misinformation and disinformation that is running rampant right now and keeping people sick, keeping them dependent on the medical system, on pharmaceutical drugs, on supplements, even from functional medicine doctors. These functional medicine doctors have something to sell you. And I wish it was just healing and coaching, and I'm sure the masses would love that from their physicians. Not for them to have a continuity model of supplements, because that's a business model, and yes, that works. However, when you have people dependent on this stuff, because you are actually spreading disinformation, right? At that point, to protect your own financial interests, you are doing most harm and not least harm. This is against the Hippocratic Oath. For any health professional, I don't care if it's mental health or otherwise, if this is the oath that you take to do least harm, you need to come correct with nutrition information before you open your mouth. I don't care the position you have, YouTube, or what social platform you're on. Even in academia, it's even more important because you're talking to future professionals. So I would love to hear your thoughts and your commentary in the comment section below. And also, as promised, the link to the blog on how 20-minute workouts can be very beneficial for you if done strategically. All right, take care.